Yes.
We ready to go? All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Public Safety Committee for Thursday, September 21st, 2023. First item of business is public comment. I have one blue card, and I believe our speaker has reviewed the terms of it, so I'd invite Zach Wynn forward.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Zach Wynn. I live here in the city, and I'd like to ask the sheriff and members of the Public Safety Committee what you think of the city's recently adopted pilot policy on unsanctioned encampments. And as it stands, there is absolutely no enforcement component and now official sanctioning of camping on city land in the area called the Green Zone. I have previously remarked in my belief that there might be a runaway growth in the number of people there now that there is a green light to camp there. And I wish Veronica was here if she can hear me. Yes, there was a recent protest and then a roadblock this last Monday that started on Cornell campus in Hope Plaza. I was up there observing and took over College Ave for a better part of an hour. And the only vehicles that were allowed to pass were TCAP buses and a few cars that snuck in front of them. And I'm curious, as you sit on the Public Safety Committee and knowing that you were there present, participating in that roadblock, how you justify violating the law and blocking the road without a permit while at the same time serving as a legislator and sitting on the Public Safety Committee. Because I see kind of a conflict there. This was brought up last night at this Common Council, and Councilperson Kumar, who is also present at the roadblock participating it with Councilperson DeFendini, she essentially equated herself to a civil rights, is a civil rights struggle or some sort of that there's some bigger justification for violating the law if your cause is righteous enough. And I don't personally subscribe to that perspective, but if you could explain to me how you felt comfortable doing that and how you can expect people to take you and what you advocate seriously, I would really appreciate it. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the Public Safety Committee? Okay. Next item is changes to the agenda, and I was informed that Mona Lita Smiley has a conflict, so she won't be able to be here to do the presentation shown on 7A. And I spoke with Lisa, and she indicated if you have any questions on it, you can just contact Mona. The next item is minutes approval for our meeting of August 17th, 2023. Could I get a motion? Ann moves, Veronica seconds. Any questions or comments on our minutes? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And the other, let's see, next item is appointments. We have one appointment of Jeremy Cranmer to the CJATI, and you have his advisory board application. Could I get a motion to appoint Jeremy? Lee moves, Mike seconds. Questions or comments? Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next item is the chair's report. And I spoke on this just a little bit at our public safety meeting, but I did want to talk about some of the resolutions that we passed at NISAC regarding EMS service. There seems to be a real focus there on this issue in upstate counties, certainly, and it's an issue we're facing as well, as you all know. There's some interesting stuff going on with requests for more state funding to try to do a program that would actually provide dollars, say, on the CHIPS model for highway equipment, to do it on for ambulance service, whether that'll go anywhere. But they were also talking about allowing municipalities to form joint districts and to allow boundaries to be more flexible than they are under the current law. And then also there was another resolution about reimbursement schemes. Apparently it's quite complicated how you get reimbursement. Lee, you probably know more about this than anybody sitting here, but the resolution was essentially to bring that around so that counties could operate ambulance services and get full reimbursement, even if they were serving people who are out of network. And we passed those resolutions. We also, as I spoke at the meeting, we passed resolutions regarding probation and raise the age and, the cell phone surcharge and next generation 911, where we really need New York State to participate and to be a major player in forming a next gen 911 system. The idea of trying to do it on a county by county basis will fail. And so far, I'm not sure New York State has stepped up. But I'd invite comment or questions on any of that. It was a pretty interesting meeting. As I said at our legislature meeting, I've rarely seen such anger in the room. So, Lee, did you have your hand up?
I'm just going to mention I'll be at a meeting for the fire service this weekend in Albany, and several of those issues you touched on are at the forefront of the state fire service organizations, and EMS reimbursements and funding is right at the top of the list. We're going through that right now. The Groton Fire Department, after 60 years of operation, finally has moved into billing for insurance proceeds, and billing the patients, which ultimately is meant to recoup from health insurance carriers, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance. And it's a onerous process. And up until last year, fire departments themselves were prohibited from billing for service for reasons that were established in the 1950s. That's changed. But one of the issues that's out there that they probably touched on is that when the providers bill a patient, they can't bill directly to their insurance company other than Medicaid and Medicare. And consequently, a lot of, there's a percentage that will send the bill in, receive the check from their insurers, and quite often it happens in the holiday season and it never gets forwarded back to the provider of the service. And so they're trying to establish a means to be able to do direct billing to the insurers to recoup that. But Anna Kellis and Senator Hinchy are working on this CHIPS model that you've talked about. And it's an aggressive approach, and one that has a lot of support among the providers, but getting the governor's attention is going to be the challenge there. So, and of course with Next Generation 911, I've lived that for 25 years. So,
Yeah.
But the state does have to step up on it.
There was mention of what you were talking about with the people, the small population of people that are using the ambulance as a way to get money from insurance companies and then not passing it on. And the term Christmas club was used as that.
Yeah, and Tim Bangs would tell you the average recoupment, at least it was about 5 years ago, you may see a bill for $2,000, you see it get adjusted, and in-network will pay a certain amount. Medicaid will only pay $160 on average. The average reimbursement to an ambulance service is around $300 per transport, even though they're billing well in excess of that. And it's because of the balance between the different payer sources. And even just for an example, with Groton, with 500 transports out of 800 calls, the most they could hope to recoup would be $150,000 a year, yet the cost of the service is about $350,000 a year. So whatever whatever relief they get through that is just offsetting the property tax levy. And that's where municipalities in particular and nonprofits really are looking for that state assistance, because the need is there to subsidize the local services that don't have a high enough volume. And again, the commercial ambulance providers, they don't make their money on 911 calls, on emergency calls. That's you know, if they don't lose money on it, they break even. Where the commercial operators are able to run a sustainable business is through the inter-facility transports, which is completely separate from the 911 realm. And it's a matter of healthcare funding that's needed to sustain these emergency services.
Ann, thank you, by the way, Lee.
Thank you. At NISAC, I spoke with somebody who from Genesee County, one of the reps, and they said that they are in the process right now of building their new jail, and which is a pod system. And I mean, Genesee County's a ways. They're between Rochester and Buffalo, but they welcomed us to come on up and tour their facility when it's done they hoped in the spring. And also they'd be willing to talk to us about all the hurdles that they're going through. Particularly one I remember they said was they thought the size of the jail, and maybe we already know this, but you know, they wanted to build a certain size jail, and the state told them they had to build a much bigger jail. So that's something we might want to, I thought maybe we could have them zoom into one of our meetings at least to talk about some of the things. Or
It'd be very interesting to hear about that.
Since they're really close in the process.
Yeah, okay. That might be very helpful to us, because we've been assuming that if we're not changing the size, New York State would sort of sit on the sidelines on that question. But consistently, it seemed like whatever was proposed in the past, they were proposing bigger jails. But since, you know, bail reform, I'm surprised that they haven't rethought that. The one other thing I'd add from NISAC is that I went to a presentation on shared services, and one of the issues was EMS, and Livingston County and Madison County seem to be well ahead of us down this pathway of building out their ambulance service. One of the items that they talked about in Livingston County was there is a hospital at the south end of the county with really all the other medical services in Rochester, and there's a great need to move people up to Rochester, and that's where they make their money, is not emergency calls, but it enables them to have the backbone. But in both cases, it seems like they went through fly cars or emergency responder vehicles or whatever you call them to full-fledged transport ambulances, and they're running, you know, they've effectively done it. You know, and they've figured out a cost model where it's built into their tax base. It is a service they provide, and, you know, maybe we're going to end up there. I hope that we don't have to go there very quickly if we have to go there here in Tompkins County, but we might learn some things from them. So, Ann, go ahead.
Listening to the HHS meeting earlier this week, and with them talking about smaller, say, doctors' offices and things are now going in through Cayuga and under their umbrella, Cayuga Health, and part of that reason is financial, and I would imagine, I'm just thinking down the road, would that be an option that we help support, but yet they have the billing set up and all of that, because if you can't get reimbursement, then you can't pay for your system.
Yeah, I don't know. Lots and lots of questions here, and I think we're going to have to face them sooner rather than later. So anyway, that's my chair's report. County administration, I thought I saw Lisa up there.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Rich.
Oh, there you are, hiding in plain sight. Yeah.
That's right.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. I don't really have too much of an update. Mona can't be with us. You have the presentation if there are questions. I too did attend the NISAC conference, and I also attended a workshop where EMS was discussed. And to reiterate what Lee, what you were saying, and Rich, what you were saying, there was discussion about this legislation regarding direct pay to ambulance providers, service providers, and it sounded like all of the everyone involved sees this as a no-brainer. That it does have a widespread support to pay the ambulance service rather than the insurance recipient, so that those reimbursements don't get lost. They shared the Senate and Assembly bill numbers that where the legislation currently is, and NISAC said that they would provide counties with a sample resolution if the legislature wanted to lend its support to that legislation. So I'm going to be looking for that, and I'm happy to share that with this committee. Though they said in terms of that direct pay, the insurance industry opposes it because it limits their ability. They state that it somehow limits their ability to negotiate rates. That's the only opposition there. Other than that, I don't think I have any other updates.
Okay. Actually, if I could just ask you to give an update on the progress of the grant for the shared services for the EMS service rollout. I know we had a resolution on that, but just timetable, because we may need to make some decisions in our budget year if we're unsuccessful with that. And if you could just tell the committee members what you know about timing.
Sure. And Bridget, Joe, and Mike were very much, Mike Steitley, Joe Milliman, and Bridget were very much involved in this. And so I'm going to ask you to back me up if I have the details incorrect here. There are two grants for which the county submitted funding for, or will be. One is the local service grant. That grant has already been applied for aid to localities, and that would help to support the vehicles themselves. And we should know the status of that by the end of the year, later on this fall. The second is the Local Government Shared Services Initiative, and that I would cover where we would be applying for the cost of the first year of the program, and that would be submitted to this, needs to be submitted to the state before the end of the year, and we would be notified of that later on in 2024. And Joe, Mike, Bridget, please correct anything that I said.
You got it correct, Lisa. You win the prize.
That's a miracle.
I guess one comment I would have is that in this very tight budget year, I would favor us putting money into contingency so that it's available if we needed it, if the grants didn't arrive. But I guess I'd like to get comment from the other committee members if this is something you feel we should be doing in 2024, or if we're unsuccessful with the grants, we just put it off for a year till 2025. What's the sense of the committee members? Any sense at all? Veronica.
I didn't retain all the details of the dates and the numbers and things to be able to opine.
Essentially,
but it's a good question.
We're putting in for this grant money. We won't know before we pass a budget, but
For either of them.
I think for either of them. Is that correct? So
Safe to say.
So what I'm saying is, I believe there's an expectation among some of the legislators who represent rural districts, as well as members of the public and the towns, that they would like to see this happen in 2024. In order to do that, I'm saying we might want to consider putting money into contingency in case we don't get the grants. And that's what I'm asking, if that makes sense to the rest of you.
You ask a question. How many years would the grant fund for the program? 1 year?
1 year.
And
So if we're doing this, we'd need to pick up some sort of cost model in 2025, if not 2024.
I don't know that anybody sees the challenges going away moving forward, so anything that we can do to be stepping toward it, I think, is probably in the best interest of the community.
I would also state, if it helps with the discussion, we plan to be meeting tomorrow, staff with administration and Department of Emergency Response, because there has been discussion around cost sharing with municipalities as a way to sustain this program going forward, either in year 2 after the grant, or if we don't receive the grant, then year 1. So we're going to be trying to firm up some more of what that would look like.
Ann?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would make sense to talk with the municipalities first before we allocated or tried to reserve that money. I think, would that give us more leverage if we talk to the municipalities first?
Yeah, well, there's an OTR that's coming to us, I think, for $682,000 that Michael has put in. So there's a number on the table. How that's paid, if the grant's paid, then year 1 is covered. But we are talking to the towns, and I agree with you completely that we need to, sooner rather than later, arrive at a cost share model.
We're not going to want to chip in if we're already paying for it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, has there been numbers such as that entertained at the Council of Governments level? I know it's been an ongoing discussion.
I haven't attended those meetings, but I understand it's been talked about in theory, so from a high level, but I don't know that actual numbers have been applied. Lisa or Bridget?
That's correct, Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been talked about in theory. I believe that the municipalities are also on board with cost sharing in theory, but we have not gotten down to brass tacks as to what those numbers would look like.
Well, that's a step in the right direction anyway, to know that it is on the radar, and we're not going to surprise them when we start talking about that concept then.
That's correct. Yes, they're aware.
Mike Sigler, did you have any thoughts?
I do not.
Okay. Veronica?
I've formed a thought now, which I
Okay.
guess it sounds like this project is something that we, or y'all have already invested a lot in, and know everyone is more or less on board with it happening. And like Lee said, the issue it's trying to address is not going to go away. So yeah, I think it makes sense to do whatever we need to do financially to start it in 2024, even if we're not going to know about the grants till later.
And Lisa, the mechanics of it, would that mean, as I suggested, Michael's OTR would go into contingency if we put it in the budget, or would it go somewhere else?
I think we're going to have to look at the numbers a little more closely to see if, for instance, if we were to put forth a cost-sharing arrangement, would that level of contingency be needed? So I think that would be the high end of what we'd be looking for in contingency. Hopefully
Okay.
less.
Hopefully.
And then also we have kind of plan B if we don't get the funding for the vehicles. There are other options that we could pursue to utilize vehicles, used vehicles from our fleet, et cetera. So there may be some other cost saving measures to pursue.
Okay. Mike, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I did that to make Lisa look good. So she can come in and say, well, I only did it for this. It'd be like your Scotty moment. It would be perfect. So.
Okay, well, thank you for all that information. Any other questions for our county administration? All right, let's move on to the sheriff's office. Welcome, Sheriff. And Under Sheriff?
Thanks, Rich, and welcome everybody. Nice to see everybody. A couple of things I want to share that I'm extremely proud of. Tuesday, we had a swearing-in ceremony for our new correction officers and one new deputy sheriff. If you remember from last time, we've hired 12 new COs. We were able to recognize them. We partnered with Crash Fire and Rescue. We're able to use one of their vehicle bays to have a really nice ceremony. Family members were able to come and support their family members as they start on with the sheriff's office. So that was a real proud moment. After that, we had an award ceremony for current employees that were recognized for exemplary acts over the year 2022. We had some life-saving awards as well as distinguished service recognition. That went really well and was a lot of fun, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. We've been doing that for quite a few years now. More importantly, we had over the last 2 days assessors from the New York State Sheriff's Association in our building, going through our jail policies, and we successfully obtained a recommendation to be reaccredited. If you're not familiar with that program, it's a voluntary program that requires that we have policies in place that meet multiple standards based on best practices, and it goes above and beyond that. They also not only look at the policies and review them, but you also have to have proofs in place to show that you're actually following the policies. So it was a lot of work. I know I often as sheriff get, a lot of the credit when good things happen, but I have to, tip my hat to General and our undersheriff and Captain Ray Bunce and Sergeant Steve Toskanoski, who's in our professional standards unit, that really went above and beyond to get this, make this happen. For several years, we've been behind in the accreditation process only due to COVID and staffing shortages. The policies were all in place, but it was a lot to do to catch up all those proofs that I mentioned. And I'm most proud of, the comments they made during our exit interview for having so many new staff on board. They said they'd never seen staff so friendly and professional, and they exude professionalism is what the comment was. So a very proud moment for all of us, and quite an accomplishment. And again, I can't take any of the credit for it other than knowing that it needed to get done. The team I have, being Jen and Ray and other people involved, they just did incredible work to make this happen. So I just wanted to share that, and that's all I have.
And you should take some credit for that, Sheriff. And if I could just add on to that a little bit, my background, as I spent 9 years working at a commercial testing inspection, commercial testing laboratory, inspection agency, certification body. And accreditation is just built into all of that. For most people, it's not something they pay a lot of attention to. But for an organization to go through it, it means that you can document pretty much everything you're doing, that you have your policies in order, that you have your training programs in order, that your people have the appropriate qualifications, that your equipment is the right equipment and it's kept in proper maintenance, and that they review incidents. It's across the board. You basically open the cupboards and let these auditors go, and it's a signal achievement to attain accreditation for an organization. It's quite hard. It's equivalent, if anybody's familiar with ISO 9000, which is the certification of a business. And you don't undertake that work lightly, and it means that the work has been done. So I'm very pleased to get that news.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did I see Lance, I saw a hand up. And you're on mute.
Thanks, Rich. I was just going to quickly add, I was with a group of law enforcement midday today. Some Cortland County sheriffs, one of their sergeants, they were saying they're down 24 correctional officers in Cortland, and Broome was way down. So it's probably more of an accomplishment than we realize that Derek and Jen and Ray have fully staffed our jail. I just thought I'd pass it on. It struck me the difference in standing between the departments.
Thank you for pointing that out. Are there any questions or comments? Ann?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say I worked in healthcare, so I'm familiar with accreditation, and I understand all the little nooks and crannies and the detail of all your paperwork and your facilities and your staffing that they go into. So congratulations on that. And also, if you're having awards or welcoming new deputies, I don't know if other folks here are invited, but if you want to invite some of us up for some of that at some point, we'd love to be able to come up and say hi to your staff and congratulate them and welcome them on board.
Absolutely, and thank you for saying that.
Okay. Anything further for our sheriff? I'd then move on to the district attorney. There he is up in the corner. Matt, welcome.
Hi, Rich. Nobody puts me in the corner. We have been providing support to the Tioga County DA's office in connection with the large kidnapping and murder case that happened and touched both of our counties. So that's just a really brief update. We've spent a lot of time working with IPD and the state police, primarily as the investigating agencies, and are now trying to give as much support as we can to Tioga County as they prosecute this case over there. So that case is moving forward. This week was a big week in terms of the court process. So that's as much of a detailed update as I can give at this point, but keep watching for that to progress. Otherwise, we are continuing to work on our data dashboard, and that will be, I think, in a position to be launched in the next probably month. So that's probably my two big points of an update.
Okay. I'm curious, the 11 people that were charged so far, are they being held here or both in here in Tioga County?
Most of them are in Tioga County. There is at least one who is here because he has an unrelated case who is has placed him in our jail. And I know that Tioga County has boarded out some of the individuals because they are a group of people that shouldn't really be associating with each other. You don't want them to be talking to each other. So I know that they're boarded out, but for the most part, they're not in our county.
All right. Any questions for the district attorney? All right. Seeing none. Thank you, Matt. Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is Department of Emergency Response. And I see Michael is with us, and let's see, Jessica, and is Joe? Was here.
Joe's here, yes.
Okay.
Joe and Danielle.
Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Good afternoon, Rich. Good afternoon, everyone. So the only thing I wanted to highlight that's not in this month's TomStat report because it happened after we submitted it, but we'll have more detail for next month. I just would like to thank the entire DOER team, especially Jeff Dunn, for all the work on this second annual Emergency Preparedness and Safety Fair. We had a fantastic turnout, not only from our emergency service partners, but also from the community. And the other thing I'd like to just highlight, and again, we'll have more detail next month, but we just learned about it the other day. Travis Collins, one of our 911 telecommunicator who was selected as our department 2023 Dispatcher of the Year, will be receiving recognition as the APCO Atlantic Dispatcher of the Year for the region. So we're really excited that he's not only going to be receiving local recognition, but also regional recognition, and we'll have some more detail in next month's TomStat report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, sorry to interrupt, can I add, as long as you're on the topic of awards, this week was the Central New York EMS Regional Award Ceremony, And out of all of the awards, every award recipient was a Tompkins County provider and one Tompkins County EMS agency. And that means that Tompkins County beat out all 4 other Central New York counties. So a huge congratulations to our EMS community.
I hope we were magnanimous in victory.
Would you just cover briefly the EMT class, the partnership with CMC and how that's progressing? Because I know that that was something that Rich had asked about early on and about what we're doing to really help support community-based services, especially with EMS training.
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So the class started on the 11th of September, so we are into ending the 2nd week of the class. I have heard a few positives out of it. I've heard no negatives. They seem to be doing really well for being a startup class. There's usually quite a bit of hiccups and doesn't seem like they're having any at this point. There were, I believe, 12 people enrolled in the class. I don't know how many have continued to show up. I can follow up and get those numbers for you. But it's a very good turnout for the class. We're partnered with Upstate, is the organization that's teaching the class. It's being held right here at Cuba Medical Center, and that's going to run through, I believe, December.
Great, great. Okay. Questions, comments?
I'll just extend my pride there. There was a couple of Groton fellows that were part of those awards.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
There, primus inter pares, right? First among equals. Yeah. Veronica.
Just congratulations on the awards. And just want to comment, I did stop by the Emergency Preparedness Fair toward the end and wish I'd been there earlier to see more of it, but it was great, like much more expansive than I expected. I got to see the inside of fire trucks, learn about organizations I didn't know existed. Really good job. I'm looking forward to next year's.
Okay.
Thank you.
I did have a couple things I wanted to ask about. One, we didn't really get a chance to talk about it last month, but I like the new reporting format that you're presenting to us. I did have some questions on that. And if we could go to page 16, you indicate the average call wait time was 5 seconds. Is that good or bad? I just didn't know.
That's actually a very good wait time.
Okay.
We try to follow standards that APCO sets for us. So that means that someone has dialed 911 and it's ringing in our center for 5 seconds on average before somebody picks it up. So in the mass chaos of things, 5 seconds it may seem long for the caller on the other end, but it's a very prompt response and it's something that we are very proud of.
It seemed like it was a good number, but I just didn't know. I see the language line has the word or the number 0 next to it. Does that mean that there was nobody calling on 911 that needed translation services?
For this month, yes. We are actually fortunate enough that we do have a dispatcher that is fluent in Spanish as well. So I know that that is something that has helped us quite a bit where we haven't had to utilize the language line.
Okay. And then on page 18, in the law enforcement calls for service for August, I noticed one of the police agencies has 0 calls. And does that mean there were no 911 calls that got routed out to that police agency? Or did they just not have any calls?
It just means that in all the data that we have, there was no call that we took for them that was transferred over to them. So they may have had their own incidents, but they don't utilize the same system that we do, so we wouldn't have that data.
Okay. And then page 19, the ambulance calls for service data was really interesting to me, but then the graph underneath that, I didn't quite understand what those numbers were. There's total calls and it was at 18,000, but it sounds like the 911 calls were in the neighborhood of 4,500. So what is the 18,000 figure?
That is overall total calls between the non-emergent and the emergent calls that the 911 center took. So that is just showing you the difference in the increase in the call volume overall between 22 and 23, just to demonstrate visually how our calls are increasing.
And they're certainly increasing. It looks like June, July, August were dramatically up from last year. And do we have any idea why that might be the case?
I would have to go back and do a little bit more digging, and I could get you a better answer, but offhand, I don't know why there was a significant increase.
Okay, I certainly don't want to send you off on a big data analysis effort, but that seems like pretty striking numbers, like 12,000 last year and 18,000 this year in August. That's a, 50% increase. Pretty dramatic. If just in thinking about it, if there was any ready answer, it would be interesting, and certainly why they've seemed to climb up in the last 3 months so much. But okay. And then just following up on a couple other things, we had talked about the siren system and trying to make sure that towns were adding to the siren signups. Have we seen any increase, in applications for that?
I don't have that handy, and Jeff isn't available to ask, but I will certainly make a note and I will find out from him.
Okay, and I know he's working on the answer on the cell phone question. I'll just let the committee know. I asked a question because of the fires in Hawaii, that one of the issues that happened there is the fire swept through and knocked out power, and the cell phone towers did not have backup power. So people lost their cell phone service right when they needed to get notifications. And so I asked what happens here, and we have a partial answer in that all of our emergency communication towers have backup power. And there are some cell service providers that piggyback on our towers, so they would have power, but Jeff is tracking down, what about the others? And we needed to get some information, I think is it GIS information? I forget what that acronym is.
We started off with Jay's team over an assessment, and then he was able to give us GIS coordinates, and our GIS team is helping us to actually come up with physical address so we can do some site visits. So we have a strategy in place. There's over 90 sites throughout the county, but I think it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor to really get a handle on it.
Yeah, I mean, it may seem like that's something that wouldn't happen here, but I think that's what they thought in Hawaii. These wildfires seem to be getting more and more common. So I really appreciate you getting us an answer on that. I don't mean to push you to do any, extraordinary work on it, but it sounds like you're getting there. So thank you. And let's see, and then my only other note, backup 911 center, it sounds like that's proceeding.
It is. We should have, we were told by Cornell, who is in the process of doing the new plans that are consistent with the variance application, that we should hopefully have something by early next week.
Okay. All right. Any further questions for Department of Emergency Response? Thank you so much. All right. And moving on, we have Department of Probation and Community Justice.
Good afternoon, Rich.
Hi, Daniel. Welcome.
Thank you. Just a few updates. Yesterday, we were notified that we received approval of our 2023-2024 state aid plan and package, which is tied to our, without approval for that, we would not receive our state aid funding. So I just wanted to let folks know that it was approved, so we should be good to go to receive our state aid funds. I wanted to recognize a couple employees, Bill Apgar and Tyler Mix, who are our work project supervisors. They recently completed the dump and run program and sale, set a new earnings record of over $80,000 was earned that will be donated to fund Cops, Kids, and Toys for this upcoming winter season. Just a small give update. We've received our first official give case to supervise, and we have 6 or 7 pre-sentence investigations in the hopper that are give qualifying offenses. We received, I believe, 4 this week. So that program is starting to pick up, and we're fully participating in the meetings and assisting the team wherever we can. We also have finalized our memorandum of understanding with the Southern Tier Crime Analysis Center so that we can begin receiving intelligence packages from them when we're working on pre-sentence investigations, which is part of the requirements that we have to fulfill. It's one of the differences in our investigation process that's required by the grant.
Okay, that's great.
That's all I have. I don't know if Carla has any additional updates.
Welcome, Carla, if you have anything.
I do not. I think Dan covered all of it.
Okay, that is certainly great news on the Kids, Cops, and Toys program. That does seem like the grab and dash, or whatever it's called, has
dump
and run. Thank you. Has just has grown and grown. That's really good news. I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the meeting, but I was talking about the NISAC Public Safety Committee resolutions that we passed, and one of them was about probation. And they noted some statistics in there that I think it was 1990, 46.5% of probation costs was covered by the state. And at this point, it's down to less than 10%. And in the same time, they've increased the local responsibilities. So, we passed a resolution saying this is unsustainable, we need to do something about this. Whether this is heard on the state level or not, I don't know, but at least it got some attention.
Well, I greatly appreciate you bringing that to people's attention, because COPA, the Council of Probation Administrators, we've been bringing it to the state's attention annually, that they just keep reducing the funds that they want to give, and they continue to ask more and more of us. So it's definitely an issue that just is deserving of being addressed at the state level.
Any questions or comments for probation? Veronica, did you have something?
All I was going to say is one person's dump and run is another person's grab and dash, and that's how we do reuse.
Yeah.
Circular.
We have a lot of the time.
Okay. Well, I don't mind if we finish the meeting early. That's allowed, as long as we cover our stuff. And I know last month I felt bad because we went over, so maybe it evens out. Our next item is our assigned counsel program, and we have Lance Salisbury with us. Welcome, Lance.
Hello, everyone. I was going to get myself in trouble and say grab and dash was a favorite activity of our clients, but
context
I might
is
have even
everything.
made Matt smile if he heard that. But,
if I can interrupt, I think that was sticking in my head because I visited with a store owner on the Commons who had that happen. So, we joke about it, but for this,
no, it is.
For this store owner,
trying to make light of it, but
their employee got punched in the face, and it's really, really bad what's been going on here. Yeah,
it is. No, I know that store. They've been hit a couple times. With people. Well, part of it is I think the response have been getting, but they've had a couple of issues there. But in terms of assigned counsel, not a lot to update. We're busy. We still tend to be busier on our family court side. But other than that, it's just kind of operations as normal.
Okay. Certainly one of the budget items we're looking at are the pretty substantial changes in funding for assigned counsel. Nothing you can do about that in your office, but it's on.
It is. I mean, and I was anticipating questions on that, at the budget process, but it is. We are getting, it is a big change. You see in our budget, we are getting more money from the state, and we're seeing this year already increased flows. The good news on that I can say is in terms of the 18B reimbursements. We've done one, but in talking with other people in ILS, those seem to be flowing within a few weeks of the submission, unless somebody has problems with them, but we're getting the money back faster than some of our reimbursements, which is somewhat good news.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments for our assigned counsel director? All right. Well, thank you, Lance. Wow. We have just flown through our agenda. Is there any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Veronica.
I don't have business, but a couple things I could report if I could have the privilege of the floor.
We have the time, please.
Okay. One, and feel free to interrupt me between them. I did, because our public commenter asked me to explain something, I'd like to do that. How my presence on the Public Safety Committee squares with participating in a roadblock a few days ago. So one thing he said, violating the law. I will make one general comment that I think that, laws are important, of course, or we wouldn't, we're lawmakers here, partially, maybe more like budget allocators. But we do make laws, and if we didn't think they were important, it wouldn't make sense to be here. But also, we all, I think, must have other values that we hold higher than that of what the law is, or at minimum equal to, or else we wouldn't be making laws. We would just, why would you ever change them if you thought that was the most important thing? So that is a piece of context. I also, someone who actually can correct me if I'm wrong, but is my understanding that standing in the street is not itself illegal. It's only illegal if you do it in defiance of a law enforcement officer's instruction to clear out and do something different. But do correct me if I'm wrong. And in this particular case, I think we were all technically we were right at the edge, but on Cornell's campus, and some Cornell campus university police came up behind those of us standing in the street, and were standing there watching, and that's it. Nothing. There were no instructions given, I think, let alone disobeyed. And in terms of safety, so what the demonstration was about was asking, really demanding Cornell to contribute more money to the city than it is planning to, and that is an issue that belongs elsewhere. But the funds in question could and probably would go to things like repairing the pavement, improving public transportation, generally improving municipal services, many of which are for the promotion of public safety, whether in response to incidents or proactive safety of all kinds. So it's, in a sense, this was like a pro-social, pro-safety effort. Clearly that would have been undermined if it had involved harm or violence, but it really didn't. People were standing, people were talking, and when a bus came, we let them through. And if an emergency vehicle came, which they didn't, would have let them through also. So that's that. I have a whole other thing, which is a couple weeks ago, I went to St. Louis for a conference, and part of that was I got to go on a little field trip to visit some group organizations there doing community violence intervention or bullet-related injury convention. And Matt and Dan and Derek, I owe you an email response to your questions, but which I will give you. But reporting back a little bit, the presentation was, there were people there from 3 organizations. One was the City of St. Louis's Office of Violence Prevention, which apparently was only created in August 2022, so it was just over a year old. And this is within their city government, but not, I think, directly reporting to the mayor. And it was originally just one person who's now the director of it, and they just hired their 12th staff member, so growing really fast. And their role, which they seem to be doing a great job of, is basically harnessing government's power to convene and bringing like organizations and people that are already doing somewhat related work together. They also spoke about how that office serves as an intermediary between police and community organizations, because I mean, some community orgs and members want to work with the police and some really don't. And of course they always can, but for those who don't, they said the Office of Violence Prevention often can serve effectively at that as that intermediary. Or maybe even like the city police will contact someone from the office and say like, hey, like this person doesn't want to interact with us, but we think they could benefit from blah, blah, blah. Can you like link them up? The other, another organization was the Freedom Community Center, which is a like, just I think grassroots like peer-to-peer Black-led organization that's focusing on, sort of grounded in a focus on trauma, both chronic and acute. And this could be chronic trauma related to whatever, but often stemming from or manifesting in gun violence, often managed with, maladaptively managed with chaotic substance use. And they had programs for both, I'm just thinking of, gun violence on the mind with you all having received the gun grant, the GIVE grant. They have programs both for like victims and offenders, basically. Or these aren't necessarily, I don't know if that's a legal term. They're not like part of the, the legal system, but people who've been injured and people who've caused injury, both. And I think they'd only been around for like 2 years and change. And with the various work they do, they said they've saved people 20 years in pretrial detention, 80 years incarceration, and saved $2.5 million city dollars. This is St. Louis, obviously bigger than here, but that was pretty impressive to me. And then the last organization was the Bullet-Related Injury Clinic, which was started by this guy, Dr. L.J. Punch, who'd been a trauma surgeon in like academic settings for a long time, and then moved to doing this community work. And he had an interesting concept of bullet-related injury, that it was not just like, it is like, yes, the physical injury from a bullet, but also the like psychological and relational damage that can be done by, say, like being shot at or threatened by a bullet, or like having someone close to you shot, like the trauma ripples out. And their group is doing like holistic remedy work, and also trying to sort of fit in the space, like in the human continuum between, I think in the guy's words, between using 5 times a day on the street and stopping using to get into treatment. Like there's like no support for the first case, and there exists a lot of like medication-assisted treatment and stuff for the latter case, and that transition in between is kind of where this group tries to live, to be, because making that jump is not something that, everybody can do or wants to do. And then there was an overall theme through this whole thing that I wanted to share back, was about like how to get community buy-in to these programs. And these were like 3 different organizations. These are not the only 3 doing this stuff. I mean, I think the city office is the only one of its kind. But they talked about partnering with a lot of organizations. And they said over and over again that to get people to participate, you really need to be out in the community, and like making relationships with people in the community you're trying to serve, which isn't surprising. And they said, because if you only respond to an incident, people will be like, well, who are you? Where were you before this happened? So what some of the organizations are doing are also, they're doing some sort of like peer work, care work, and in addition to doing it, they're like training the people receiving the care to do that to others. And this could be even something like how do you wrap a bullet wound, or these are things I don't know. And now it's been going on long enough that the folks they've trained now are like training others, or sort of like it's the information about the organizations, but about the like, how do you care for each other has been seeping into the community. And they said in practice that all just takes time because it's all a relationship-based model. And I believe, so like the bullet-related injury clinic, they have a truck that goes around and they start by showing up at the same time, same place every week. And then people know they can come to there. Apparently other organizations find out and kind of like tack on and the whole thing grows. And I believe it's a direct quote that the guy said, it's just showing up, showing up, showing up, showing up. There's no replacing that. Anyway, so that's my report back from that. I thought it was pretty like inspiring, relevant. I'm certainly not like, again, there's differences. There's going to be just more of everything in a city like St. Louis than in Tompkins County. But I thought it was pretty cool what all these groups were doing.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments for Veronica? Okay. Anything further to come before the Public Safety Committee? Seeing none, got to get a motion to adjourn. Veronica moves and seconds. All those in favor? All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next month.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everybody.